The Sports Time Podcast.
All right, I am pleased to be joined by a reoccurring guest from the Pickle Podcast, Kyle Hoffman. How's it going, Kyle?
It's going awesome. I've had a heck of a day, but I have quite enough energy to talk about the UFC right now, so I'm pumped. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Always enjoy talking about the UFC, especially tomorrow night. That's a huge event. Of course, at the time of this recording, it was Friday night. So before we start with the UFC, we had a fight that happened last week between Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul. The fight didn't exactly go as everybody was expecting it to go. What did you think of the fight, and did you think it was a waste to watch?
Well, I just want to start out by saying that I truly believe that there was a no knockout contract on that fight. I did see the footage where Floyd was holding up Paul. He says he didn't get knocked out. However, the evidence is kind of clear to me that there was a rigged fight. I knew that coming in, that this was probably going to be some type of agreement fight, extra stuff in the contract that would affect the fight. I did have Mayweather winning that fight in before 8 rounds, but it ended up going the distance. I was really surprised that Floyd didn't knock him out at the end because their trainers were actually talking to Logan Paul, and they told him that Floyd's going to turn it on in the later rounds. So he ended up doing that and didn't finish Paul, which I thought was a win for Paul. And I think it sealed his legacy as a somewhat legitimate boxer. And I hope that he gets another opponent, maybe not as good as Floyd, but I really hope that he gets another decent opponent and can show us what he can do, because I liked what he did against Mayweather, but he's got to keep his hands up. He's got to keep his hands up. So that's my advice to him.
Well, the first round, Logan Paul looked pretty good, but then after the first round, he looked super tired, I remember, and he was just like basically hugging Floyd Mayweather the rest of the rounds. And I thought the same thing too, because Floyd Mayweather did the same thing when he fought Conor McGregor. He just kind of waited around, and then like the 7th or 8th round, that's when he went ham on him and finally had technically a technical knockout. But let's see here, did it look worse for Floyd Mayweather since he wasn't able to knock out Logan Paul?
I think it did look worse for Mayweather as far as what he did in the first round, because being that I think it was a rigged fight, I didn't think Mayweather was even trying to hurt Paul in the first round because he knew that was going to lose all the pay-per-view money. However, I don't think Mayweather cares. He's Money Magic Mayweather, whatever he wants to call himself. As long as he gets that money, he doesn't care. He's probably just lucky he didn't actually catch one of those Logan Paul right hooks coming in. So he actually did get popped with a few of those.
Yeah, I mean, we got to give credit to Logan Paul, but at the same time, Floyd Mayweather, you're one of the greatest boxers of all time. I understand Logan Paul's a lot bigger than you, but you have to get a knockout at least in the later rounds. But that's boxing, basically.
Yeah.
So
Floyd did not look the same, though. I think you can agree. He did not look like he did in his last fight versus McGregor. It looked like he had been, ordering some takeout. But he was still looking good at the end. He still had that power punching and that speed that Mayweather has. He's just as fast as he's always been, and I wouldn't be surprised if he fought again in the near future, honestly.
I think if it really depends on how much money he would get, and I think if he would get enough money, I think he would definitely consider it. Let's jump on to another Paul. Of course, I think before the fight happened, Jake Paul agreed to fight Tyron Woodley. Woodley is no longer associated with the UFC, so he can kind of do his own fights as of now. Who do you like in this matchup, and could you see Tyron Woodley getting a knockout over Jake Paul?
I can see Tyron Woodley getting a knockout over Jake Paul. I think there's actually bad blood there between those two. That's real. I've seen it. I've felt it. I've seen their face-offs, and I think I'll give all the credit to Jake Paul that he's ready to step in and face a real opponent. All the credit in the world to him. However, he probably didn't want to say what he said to Woodley before this fight got agreed to, because I think Woodley's going to go in there with a vengeance. Now, if you look at Woodley's past, though, as far as Chael Sonnen commented, Chael Sonnen said that, Woodley has to be careful going in there, and he has to decisively finish Paul. He has to take this seriously, or else Paul could come back and win that fight. I'm not sure that Paul would specifically get the knockout against Woodley, since Woodley's kind of hard to knock out. But I think Jake Paul could win this fight if Tyron Woodley does not take it seriously. And knowing Tyron Woodley's past, And the way that Dana White's had opinions about Tyron Woodley's behavior, I'm not so sure he's going to take it seriously. I think he's angry. I think he wants Paul to be embarrassed, but I'm not so sure he's actually taking Paul seriously. So I will be tuning in for this fight. This is going to be a great fight.
I'm excited as well, but I'm kind of disappointed because I wanted Jake Paul to fight a real boxer like a Tommy Fury, but obviously that's not going to happen. Tyron Woodley, we all know he's a great striker, but I'm still kind of with you. I don't know if he's going to take it seriously enough. And I think even Joe Rogan said that Tyron Woodley could get knocked out. You think Jake Paul could knock him out? I mean,
if he takes him into later rounds, he could absolutely knock him out. Jake Paul does have power. And I said that before the Ben Askren fight. I said, if he connects with Askren, it's just like Robbie Lawler hitting him at the end of his career. So yeah, it's totally possible. The only thing is you have to watch out for the fight promoters and what they're doing. So be sure to stay tuned in the weeks coming up to the fight and see if you can figure anything out about if you think this fight's going to go a certain way, because I truly believe that they have certain things in the contracts with these fights. And I think if I was to give you betting advice on this fight, which I don't generally like to do on these type of fights, I would bet on Jake Paul winning the fight.
Okay.
That's where the money's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not sure where I want to go on that yet. I think we still have 2.5 months, so I think I'm going to wait until later just because I'm not exactly sure what we're going to see from both fighters. I am a little worried that Tyron Woodley is older too, so that could be a factor as well.
Absolutely.
Like I said, he's got 4 straight losses, and his last win came in 2018. So
yeah, and I think that an actual pure boxer has a better chance to defeat Jake Paul than Woodley does. Woodley has great boxing, but he is also a lot shorter. And he does like to rely on those haymaker punches. I think Jake Paul is going to come out early and he's going to come jabbing Woodley and he's going to piece Woodley up early. It's up to Woodley to decide if he wants to take that fight into his own hands.
It's definitely going to be an exciting fight, and I can't wait to watch on August 28th. I think that fight is now on Showtime, so I'm pretty excited for that. All right, so let's get on to UFC 263. Let's start with the main card. We're just going to go with the main card for now. Let's start off with the first fight, Paul Craig versus Jamahal Hill. You were talking about earlier, you like Hill in this matchup. Why is that?
I like Hill in this matchup because he's one of those prototype fighters who's going to come in with a long reach. He's going to be really quick, and he's going to fight off Paul Craig with his jabs. Now, what I was talking with you about earlier, Paul Craig does pose somewhat of a danger to Jamahal Hill in that he likes to walk through punches and is great at finishing opponents after doing that. So Jamahal Hill has to make sure to keep his distance from Paul Craig. Don't get too aggressive with Paul Craig. Take him down, wear him out, bleed him into later rounds, and that's how you're going to win against Paul Craig. If Jamahal Hill tries to get the early knockout against Paul Craig, he could absolutely do that. However, he does take a risk because Paul Craig is a great a great 1 and 2 round finisher.
So do you think the Scotsman can get the victory here? And do you think the only way that he can get the win is by knockout?
I think that he may be able to knock Jamahal Hill out on the ground if he gets him down. Paul Craig's great at ground and pound, and I think he's going to be trying to go for those leg takedowns and get the ground and pound in this fight. It's up to Jamahal Hill to try to avoid that, keep his distance, like I said. But in the end, I just don't think Paul Craig's going to be able to get it done. Jamahal Hill has pretty good ground defense for how long he is, and I just think that Jamahal Hill is going to take this fight. I think that Paul Craig may last 2 or 3 rounds, but I don't see Paul Craig winning this fight.
Let's go on. Before we start with the other fight on the card, you were talking about earlier that Hill is similar to a John Jones / Adesanya, the way he fights and stuff like that. If he gets the win, who do you think would be his next challenger? And when do you think he can challenge for the light heavyweight title?
Yeah, I think Johnny Walker or Anthony Smith. Johnny Walker is currently ranked 10th, I think, on the light heavyweight, and Anthony Smith is 4. I think it's more likely that Dana White would want to make a matchup with Johnny Walker just because those two fighters against each other, it's going to make for an exciting bout. And it's a good way for him to crack into the top 10 without having to go after Smith, who I think is overrated in that division. Yeah,
it's definitely going to be an exciting match. And this is definitely a very good card, to be honest with you, when you have two championship bouts. So this is going to be pretty exciting. So we'll go to our next matchup, Damian Maia versus Bilal Muhammad. Who do you like in this matchup?
I don't like either of the fighters in this matchup. This is one of those fights. I think that on every single card, there's one of them. You have older Damian Maia still trying to compete at his age versus a Bilal Muhammad who's come into his prime. So I like the matchup in the sense of views and pay-per-view money, because I think this is going to be a fun fight. It's hard telling what's going to happen. I think that if I was to put my money down, and I hate to say this, but if I was to put my money down, I would take Bilal Muhammad in this fight, because the only way Damian Maia is going to win this fight is if he backpacks Bilal Muhammad. So your money bet is Damian Maia, but your safe bet is Bilal Muhammad.
What's next for both fighters?
It's hard to tell down in those ranks who Dana White would want to have face, but at welterweight, we could actually jump around and look at some different things here. So if I go to welterweight rankings, okay. So as far as the welterweight rankings, Bilal Muhammad is at number 12 right now. And Damian Maia is at number 9. Again, I think Damian Maia is overrated. I would rank Bilal Muhammad above him. But I do think that Jorge Masvidal might be needing an opponent sometime soon to kind of come back from where he went. So I think Jorge Masvidal might be wanting that fight just so he can get an easy one and get back in the win column. Also, haven't seen Michael Chiesa in a while either. I wouldn't put anybody else above him against any of those two guys, but I think those are two good opponents. Possibly Salikov as well. Salikov just won in decisive fashion. So I think that maybe if Bilal Muhammad wins, I think a fight that would be great to see would be him versus Salikov, a kickboxer versus a wrestler and mauler. It would be a great matchup.
I was definitely not expecting Masvidal, but as you mentioned, he's had back-to-back losses to Usman, so I guess he would need someone to fight. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him now that he's such a fan favorite, but of course he's lost. He's already got 15 losses and he's getting up there, so we'll see what happens.
If Damian Maia backpacks Bilal Muhammad and chokes him out, we could see a Ben Askren 2 type rematch with Masvidal, and I'm not joking. But it's all up to speculation at this point. It's fun to think about. It's probably not going to happen with Masvidal, but it's something that I would love to see.
All right, let's jump on to I guess it would be a tri-main event, technically not really, but so Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. Diaz is back. He's the heavy underdog in this matchup. I'm assuming you have Edwards in this fight.
I have Edwards in this fight, and I will say that there's a couple different ways Edwards could win this fight. And there's about 2 ways Nate Diaz could win this fight. Now, if you remember back when Jorge Masvidal actually got into a fight with Leon Edwards backstage, they were actually supposed to be on track to fight, which I would have loved to see. And then you saw what Jorge Masvidal did to Nate Diaz. So if I do a little comparing in my brain here, I know that I thought Leon Edwards might have been a decent opponent for Masvidal, being that he was longer and had some striking power. And then you saw what Masvidal did to Diaz. I think Diaz is probably going to get pieced up in the first couple of rounds, but if he survives, he could take Leon Edwards out late rounds. I mean, this is one of those fights that if Leon Edwards is going to win it, it has to be an early finish, or he's got to go the distance with Nate Diaz, because if you get Nate Diaz past 3 rounds, he's going to find a way to box you up, get in your face, wear you out, and choke you out. And that may very well happen. Your money fight in this bet is Nate Diaz. Your safe bet is Leon Edwards.
This is probably a huge no, but do you think Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor will ever fight again?
If Nate Diaz wins this fight against Leon Edwards, an up and coming welterweight who's approaching the top of the division, I can see it. I could see it. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've seen him already fight twice. I think McGregor won both times, correct? Or was it just once? I think it was twice, though, wasn't it?
No, McGregor lost the first one, and then he came back and won the second one by decision. Now, that's why people want to see the trilogy, because he's never finished Diaz. I think McGregor would love to try to finish Diaz, and I think Diaz, the only thing with Diaz is I don't think he would want to fight McGregor again unless there was a lot of money involved. So it is possible. He doesn't like McGregor. The thing about this is if Nate Diaz wins in decisive fashion, it's Nate Diaz mania all over again. And then Conor McGregor is going to tweet him and it's going to be a thing. So get ready. If Nate Diaz wins this fight, Conor McGregor is going to be all over social media talking that smack.
That's going to be definitely fun, but I think McGregor first had to take care of Dustin Poirier, which I don't think he's going to, but it would be, I can't wait for that fight too.
Well, hold on. You want to talk about that, JJ?
We can. Yep.
So I actually thought that, I was imagining the trilogy and I was kind of, playing it back in my head, and I had a chance to look at some behind the scenes stuff with McGregor. The main thing that I noticed about McGregor is that he's suffering from that ring rust. You made all your money, you got your millions of dollars, and then you come back and you don't have the same mentality. You're the same fighter, but you're not going in with the same approach or the same strategy that you did before. I think losing to Dustin Poirier is going to somehow light a fire under Conor McGregor. I've seen him working out with the heavy bags much more often. I think that he's going to beef up and put some more muscle on for Poirier. Because he's not going to be able to just rely on his speed to beat Poirier anymore. He's going to have to use some wrestling, and he's going to have to use some close in the clinch, power punch style melee attacks, sort of like what he did to Donald Cerrone. If Conor McGregor goes into that fight like he did against Donald Cerrone, he could win.
Yeah, that's a huge possibility. I just think with the way we saw last time between Poirier and McGregor, it was just Poirier dominated him. And in my opinion, I still think Poirier is the best fighter in the lightweight division.
At this time, I agree with you 100%. And you are right in that fashion. Poirier dominated that fight. I will also say that McGregor didn't have much of a chance to come back because he was finished by Poirier. But then that more credit to Poirier for getting that done.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for that one. Let's go on to the co-main event between Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. Who do you like in that matchup?
Well, I'm getting out my PS5 this weekend because I'm going for the God of War, baby. The Deiveson Figueiredo, I think, is going to win this fight. He's got something to prove against Moreno. He's really mad that Moreno talked all that smack last time about him being sick and doubted that he was actually sick for that fight. But one thing I was talking to you with earlier, JJ, is that Figueiredo had power punches late in that fight, even though it went the decision. So Figueiredo's cardio is not going to come into play, I don't think, here. And I think that's where Moreno's tried to beat him last time. He tried to take him into deeper rounds and drown him with his wrestling. I don't think it's going to happen again. It's not going to happen because Deiveson Figueiredo is A, stronger than Brandon Moreno, and B, he knows what's coming. So look for Figueiredo to throw some wild head kicks, spinning back fists, might even jump off the cage. Who knows? But Figueiredo is going to be pulling out all the stops out on this one. I believe that he has a plan for Moreno, and I think Moreno is going into this fight with a plan that is not going to work.
Deiveson Figueiredo is one of the greatest flyweight fighters in UFC history. If he somehow loses this fight, which it doesn't look like he's going to, but if he loses this fight, would that hurt his legacy a little bit?
Absolutely. If he loses to Brandon Moreno, it could hurt his legacy because, again, he was never able to finish Moreno. And then if he loses to Moreno again, it's going to be hard to make quality pay-per-view fights with Deiveson Figueiredo after he loses to Moreno. Dana White wants to put Figueiredo up against the best guys in the division. And I think that if he loses, I think it's just, Dana White's not going to like that. And I think he's going to have to take a couple tin can fights to get back to where he wants to go. Not tin can fights, but he's going to have to take some lower opponents to get back after he loses to Moreno if he does.
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, I think, like I said, you think Figueiredo is going to get it done pretty quickly. Of course, the last time they fought was a draw. It was one of the first times in UFC history. So I'm definitely excited for that fight as well. That's definitely going to get a lot of views on that one.
Oh yeah.
So let's go to the main event between Israel Adesanya versus Marvin Vettoria. It's the second time they're fighting. I'm assuming you've got Adesanya, but you kind of were a little hesitant before we started the interview. What do you think about this fight? And do you think it goes the distance?
When I think about these type of fights, these championship events against a solid champion who's proven himself time and time again, coming off a loss versus Vettori, who's been on a absolute tear and is anxious to get back in there with Adesanya. I had a chance to analyze some of their attitudes. I watched the Embedded series, and Adesanya is acting like his normal self, talking smack, making jokes, talking to the camera and stuff. So I do see a little bit of hesitation and anger in Adesanya, though. I think that he is annoyed by Marvin Vettori. And I think that may play into this fight as far as Israel Adesanya's strategy. It's either going to help end the fight quickly, or it's going to be what gets Adesanya in trouble. He's got to go in there emotionless. Marvin Vettori knows how to poke people's buttons and get in your face. He keeps calling him buddy. You remember when Vettori got into a verbal argument with another fighter at a hotel a year ago? He really knows how to get in people's heads. And I think that on fight night, Vettori is going to be really intense and Adesanya is going to be real quiet because he's going to want to take care of business. This is going to be, it might be a boring fight, guys. Just because Adesanya is going to not want to get taken down by Vettori, and Vettori is going to be wanting to take Adesanya down because he thinks that's a winning strategy. So it might be a boring fight. However, I do have money on Adesanya ending this fight early or going the distance against Vettori and winning again. I don't see Vettori winning this fight by anything other than decision, unless he gets the takedown and is able to ground and pound Adesanya. In the end, guys, I think it's going to be another 5-round decision, to be honest.
If Vettori does end up winning, does that make him a household name in the UFC at least?
If Vettori wins, the whole country of Italy is going to explode, and we're going to hear about it for months. I think he's going to become a superstar just because, there's not a huge market in Italy, but there's really there's never been an Italian champion. So the memes are going to come out. You know what I mean? He's going to be meme famous if he wins. And I think he's going to be, he's definitely going to be a bigger star than he is now. I hope he wins because I'd like to see Adesanya maybe get a little lesson learned maybe about going up to fight Blachowicz and coming down and underestimating an opponent possibly. But yeah, I'm rooting for Vettori to win this fight because I want to see that happen. However, I just don't think Adesanya is going to let it happen.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Italy's not much of a big UFC or MMA market, but I don't think Ireland was much of an MMA market until Conor McGregor, and that just exploded. And McGregor's one of the most polarizing UFC fighters in history now.
Yeah, and Italians stick together just like Irish people stick together. They're very family oriented, and Vittori's got a lot of connections in Italy, and he knows a lot of people. He knows a lot of famous people too. So if Marvin Vettori wins, expect a lot of hoopla. We'll expect a lot of excitement.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited as well. I can't wait. Better get the popcorn out. It's gonna be a fun night. Ooh. That's for sure. So let's go to the future. We already talked a little bit about the UFC 264 versus McGregor and Poirier, but is there any other fights on that card that you really want to see and can't wait to watch?
I'm really excited for the Tai Tuivasa versus Greg Hardy fight, JJ. Greg Hardy needs to prove himself against somebody like Tai Tuivasa to solidify his place in that division. He's sort of a black sheep in there. Some people don't take him seriously. However, Tai Tuivasa has been known to get knocked out by heavier, strong-handed opponents. And he's been beaten a few times. He has improved the last couple fights. In fact, I think he just had a victory a while back, but this is going to be a very fun fight to watch. Two strikers who love to just get in their opponent's face, and they both have good ground games as well. Greg Hardy's going to come in probably heavier in this fight. I actually have Greg Hardy possibly winning this fight, guys.
It's kind of crazy how the evolution of Greg Hardy in the MMA. Of course, at one time he was a football player playing for the Cowboys and the Panthers and stuff like that. And it's kind of crazy how much he's gotten to become such a big. I mean, he's the co-main event, right?
Yeah, he's doing well. I mean, he's basically the poor man's Brock Lesnar of our time. He's a mauler. He comes from a different sport. He's much bigger than the other opponents. He's got that professional athlete physicality that Brock Lesnar had. He's one of those monsters, man. So watch out for Greg Hardy to come in and get better and better and better.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. It's definitely exciting for what he's done in his career. Of course, if he can continue his success in the MMA, it would be awesome to watch that. So.
If Greg Hardy loses this fight, it's going to be because of his mental decisions. Tai Tuivasa is an extremely intelligent, high IQ fighter, and he's very good at telegraphing his opponent's strikes and countering. So Greg Hardy, if he connects with Tuivasa, he's got to connect, but I think he will.
Okay. All right. So again, thanks for coming on, Kyle. But before we end the interview, if you want to talk more about the podcast, and also you had something else you were about to start. You were talking to me before the interview. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Yeah, I just got a few things. We are going to be, me and Andrew from the Pickle Podcast are going to be on DJ Brian Lee's podcast on this coming Tuesday. So make sure to go check that out. I think he'll have that up the next day. We're gonna have some interesting stuff on there about what we're doing. So check that out if you want to see what we're doing. I will also say that we're starting up the podcast again. We're doing the Pickle Podcast. We're also doing something called Friends Cast, where we actually just have people on that we know, and we just talk about whatever we want. So it's going to be a free for all, and it's going to be super fun. The last thing that we're doing, JJ, and that I know I had talked to you about before, is we are attempting to start a sports book company where we can give people realistic betting analysis and background information on these fights. They happen every week. There's a huge market for it. And the reason we're doing this is because people who are betting not much money on sports right now, who don't have a lot of cash flow to bet, are winning hundreds of dollars off of $10 worth of parlays with the system that we've been doing. So we're going to be putting this information out on the Pickle Podcast soon, and you can find it all there. So if you like betting on sports and you want to put minimal money down and maximize your profits on sports betting, especially UFC, make sure you check out the Pickle Podcast page. We will be updating you on the G2G Sportsbook soon. And hopefully, JJ, you are going to be a part of that as well.
Okay, sounds awesome. Again, don't forget to check out the Pickle Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much wherever you get your podcast. Also, check out his new betting app. Of course, you can follow him on Instagram at Facebook at the Pickle Podcast. Is there anything else you want to add before we end the interview?
Everybody, get your popcorn for these fights. It's going to be one of the best cards of the year.
All right, thanks again, Kyle, for coming on, and have a wonderful night.
You too, JJ. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Town Podcast, or the STP Pod for short. If you want to check out more videos of the Sports Town Podcast, click on the left. If you want to subscribe to the channel, click on the right.